It was the first day at Westbridge High, and Mander Xusk was already the talk of the school. As the son of world-renowned billionaire Elon Musk, he had spent most of his life in private academies, institutions where every day was an exercise in exclusivity and constant comparisons among elite classmates. But after years of isolation and his father's insistence that he experience the real world, he now found himself stepping through the doors of a public high school where no one truly understood what it was like to live in his shadow. Despite the vast wealth his name suggested, Mander had no interest in flaunting his privilege. He dressed simply: black jeans, a plain hoodie, and a backpack that resisted any suggestion of opulence. His father's money had never made life easier for him socially. Rather, it had erected barriers. People either worshipped him for his status or despised him for it. Today, however, he hoped Westbridge High would be different, a place where he could blend into the ordinary and maybe even discover who he truly was. As he navigated the bustling corridors, fragments of conversation trailed behind him. "That's him," someone whispered. "The billionaire's kid. What's he doing here?" Mander tried to ignore the murmurs, focusing instead on the classroom ahead. He slid into a seat and, to his quiet surprise, found that his new beginning might come with a twist. A familiar face, not of the elite, but someone whose presence felt refreshingly normal. Emily Carter. Lunch break brought with it an unexpected turning point. Wandering the noisy cafeteria in search of an empty seat, Mander's eyes fell on a girl sitting alone by the window, completely absorbed in a worn paperback. Her name, he soon learned, was Emily Carter, a well-known figure at Westbridge for her beauty, kindness, and independent spirit. "Is this seat taken?" Mander asked, his voice tentative yet genuine. Emily looked up, startled for just a moment before offering a small smile. No. Go ahead." Their conversation began casually, discussing classes, favorite music, and the awkwardness of first impressions. To Mander's relief, Emily didn't treat him as the rich kid, nor did she seem to flinch at the mention of his last name. In her eyes, he was just another person, and that simple act of normalcy kindled a spark of connection. However, not everyone in the cafeteria shared Emily's warm curiosity. Across the room, a group of football players exchanged guarded glances and murmured comments. At their center stood Ryan Holloway, Emily's recent ex-boyfriend, the captain of the football team, and the self-appointed king of Westbridge High. His eyes darkened as he watched Mander and Emily talk, a storm of jealousy and anger gathering within him. Later that afternoon, after classes had ended and the corridors had begun to empty, Mander's newfound hope was abruptly tested. While collecting his books from his locker, he was suddenly surrounded by a cluster of sneering faces. Ryan stepped forward, his voice low and menacing. "Listen, rich boy," Ryan spat. "Emily isn't for you. She's mine." Mander met Ryan's glare with quiet resolve. She didn't seem to agree with that at lunch. Ryan's jaw clenched and his tone turned dangerous. "I don't care who your dad is. Stay away from her, or you'll regret it." Mander sighed inwardly. He had seen this kind before too often. The entitled, self-proclaimed alpha male who thought he could control everyone around him. Without a word, Mander shut his locker and walked away. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was merely the opening act of something far larger. The following day, the tension escalated. In the middle of a crowded hallway, as Mander turned a corner, a sharp, forceful shoulder ram sent him crashing against the lockers. The impact reverberated through his aching body, and mocking laughter erupted from a group of onlookers. "Oops," Ryan called out in a tone that bordered on amusement. "Guess you should watch where you're going." Mander slowly pushed himself up, pain flickering across his face. His eyes locked with Ryan's, a silent exchange of defiance. He knew that fists weren't the answer. His father had taught him that true strength lay in strategy and restraint. Later that afternoon, as Mander sat quietly outside the school grounds, Emily found him gazing off into the distance. "Are you okay?" she asked, genuine concern softening her words. "Yeah," Mander replied, though his mind churned with plans for a more clever response. "Just thinking." Emily frowned, her protective instincts rising. "Ryan's an idiot. You shouldn't let him get to you." A confident, almost ironic smile tugged at Mander's lips. "Oh, he won't." Realizing that brute force would only escalate the conflict, Mander resolved to handle the situation with cunning. That very night, He contacted a top-tier investigator, someone his father had once relied on, requesting any and every piece of information on Ryan Holloway. "I need everything on him," Mander instructed over the phone. "His past, his present, anything that might be useful." Within a day, a thick file arrived at his door. As Mander sifted through the pages, he uncovered a trove of details, records of Ryan's poor academic performance, disciplinary warnings, and even a secret history of manipulating sports scores through underhanded means. The file painted a picture of a young man desperate to cling to power, willing to do anything to maintain his status. Armed with this information, the next morning saw Mander walk straight into the principal's office. "I have some information you might find interesting," he said, placing the file on the desk with deliberate calm. "It's about your star athlete." The file quickly ignited a firestorm of rumors and investigations that reverberated throughout the school. Ryan's pristine image was shattered almost overnight, his suspension from the football team marking a dramatic shift in the social hierarchy. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours, whispers of scandal had spread like wildfire. Students who once admired Ryan now looked at him with a mixture of pity and disdain. His suspension, a direct consequence of Mander's revelations, cost him not only his status on the team but also the loyalty of his closest friends. But Ryan was not one to accept defeat quietly. Late one night, after a long day of tutoring, Mander found himself cornered in the school's dimly lit parking lot. Ryan, his face a mask of fury, stepped forward with a small band of loyal followers. "You think you can ruin my life and just walk away?" Ryan hissed, his voice low and seething with anger. Mander's tone remained measured. "I didn't ruin your life. I merely exposed what you've been hiding." Enraged, Ryan lunged forward. But before the confrontation could escalate further, Mander's driver, a seasoned security professional, stepped out of the car, his imposing presence halting Ryan's momentum. "I'd think carefully about your next move," Mander warned coolly, "because I can make things much worse for you." Ryan's eyes flashed with fury, his fists clenching in impotent rage, and with a final scowl, he backed away into the night, defeated for now. With Ryan's influence diminished, Mander began to carve out his own niche at Westbridge High. Slowly, the hostile whispers in the halls gave way to nods of acknowledgement and even friendly greetings. Teachers, once distant and overly formal, engaged him in thoughtful discussions about his ideas and ambitions. In class, Mander discovered a passion for learning that transcended the trappings of privilege. During a heated history lesson on power dynamics and revolution, he shared incisive insights that caught even his toughest critics by surprise. His opinions, free from the stigma of his family name, began to command respect on their own merit. Outside the classroom, his relationship with Emily deepened. Their lunch breaks turned into long, meaningful conversations beneath the sprawling oak trees in the courtyard. Emily's gentle humor and unwavering integrity became his anchor, a reminder that he was more than his father's son. One particularly crisp afternoon, as the two strolled along a tree-lined path, Emily confided, "It's not just about fitting in, Mander. It's about defining who you are, regardless of what anyone else expects." Her words resonated with him, stirring a determination to explore new interests. Mander joined the debate club, began volunteering at local community centers, and even started writing his own short stories, a medium through which he could express his inner life, far removed from the burdens of wealth and legacy. Yet amid these moments of growth, shadows of the past occasionally crept in. Late at night, the echoes of solitary years in elite academies would resurface, reminding him of the isolation he'd long endured. Instead of succumbing to despair, these memories fueled his desire to forge genuine connections and create a future defined by his own choices. On the last day of school, as the final bell rang and corridors emptied of anxious energy, Mander and Emily found themselves walking side by side. Their path led them past classrooms that held memories of conflict and growth. The room where he had spoken passionately in history, the corridor that had witnessed his quiet defiance against bullies, and the secluded courtyard that had become his sanctuary. Stopping beneath a golden sunset, Emily turned to him with a tender smile. "So, what's next for you, Mander Xusk?" she asked softly, her eyes glimmering with anticipation. Mander grinned, feeling a freedom that had eluded him for so long. Something big. Just wait and see. In that moment, he realized that his life was finally his own, a journey not defined by his father's shadow, but by his own hard-won choices and the promise of tomorrow. Just as Mander began to embrace this new chapter, an unexpected revelation threatened to upend everything he'd built. One stormy evening, while reviewing additional documents sent to him anonymously, a side envelope left at his door with no return address, Mander discovered a hidden layer within Ryan's file. Among the details of cheating and poor behavior lay a series of documents that hinted at something far more sinister. The newly uncovered files contained evidence implicating several respected figures at Westbridge High, including Principal Reynolds and the revered football coach, Coach Martin. Through a series of confidential emails, financial ledgers, and cryptic messages, it became clear that these authority figures were entangled in a covert scheme of academic fraud and bribery. Ryan, it appeared, had been nothing more than a pawn in a larger game, a scapegoat carefully chosen to divert suspicion from an elaborate network of corruption. Shaken by the discovery, Mander immediately sought out Emily in the quiet sanctuary of the school library. Under the dim glow of a desk lamp, he slid the incriminating documents across the table to her. "Emily, look at this," he urged quietly, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Her eyes widened as she scanned the papers. This implicates Principal Reynolds and Coach Martin," she murmured. "I've heard rumors, but I never imagined it went this deep." The revelation was a turning point. Mander's earlier battle with Ryan now seemed trivial compared to the systemic injustice lurking beneath the school's polished surface. As the weight of the evidence settled upon him, Mander realized that exposing this corruption would not only jeopardize his own newfound place in the community, it could shatter the very institution he had begun to call home. Yet in that moment of moral reckoning, Mander found his resolve. "I can't stand by while innocent people suffer for someone else's greed," he said, determination hardening his tone. Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes fierce with shared purpose. "This isn't just about high school politics anymore," she whispered. "It's about justice. We have to do something." Together, they formed a clandestine alliance, meticulously gathering further evidence while navigating a labyrinth of secrets and loyalties. Every conversation in hushed tones, every clandestine meeting in the deserted wings of the school, brought them closer to unmasking the unseen puppet masters who had manipulated everyone from the shadows. In the months that followed, whispers of scandal and murmurs of betrayal grew louder throughout Westbridge High. With Mander and Emily's evidence slowly surfacing, more students and even a few brave faculty members began to question the established order. The facade of integrity that had long shrouded the school started to crumble, exposing the corruption beneath. Standing before an assembly of students and faculty during an emergency meeting, Mander addressed the crowd with a newfound confidence. "This is not just about my story or Ryan's downfall," he declared. "It's about reclaiming our community and standing up for what's right even when it's hard." As he looked out over the sea of determined faces, he caught Emily's eye. Her steady gaze and unwavering resolve reminded him that sometimes the most unexpected twists in life lead to the most profound transformations. Together, they had sparked a movement, a call for transparency, accountability, and true justice. With the truth as their guide, Mander and Emily stepped forward into a future that promised to be as challenging as it was hopeful. Their journey had begun as a simple struggle for acceptance, but had evolved into a battle for integrity that would echo far beyond the walls of Westbridge High. In that bittersweet dawn of a new chapter, the legacy of the past was rewritten, not by the privileges of birth, but by the courage to face injustice and the determination to forge a better tomorrow.